Because last week you didn't have a lesson because of Imlek, right? So basically today we have to review chapters 11 until 16. I'm gonna ask you guys what each chapter is about, or what is the biggest event happening in the chapter. So be ready, because I'll be calling out names. But before we do that, I'm gonna go let you watch part 2 and part 3 of the video. Part 1 was about the plot, we did that already. Part 2 is about the characters in the story, and part 3 is about the symbols. And next week we're gonna watch the 4th part, which is about the themes in the story. Okay? Just so you get a real idea. And then starting March, we're gonna dig into a little bit into the, what is that? The literary techniques and elements. Okay, for now, we're just really trying to get the story going and understanding the characters, the symbols, and the themes. Okay. Hopefully the internet works well, guys, because we had a bit of a problem with that. I had a bit of a problem with that just now. So hopefully it works. Yeah, we have to...
Catherine meets Hareton. Isabella dies. Linton comes to live at deliver the final blow to complete the anti-hero of Wuthering Heights. There are a few key characters whose intergenerational...
Okay. Wait a sec. We need to have, what is that? Premium, yeah? Okay, this is the characters. Come on. Okay, give it a sec, guys.
Is the anti-hero of Wuthering Heights. Adopted as an orphan by Mr. Earnshaw, Heathcliff is favored by his adopted father over his own son, Hindley, who comes to loathe and resent Heathcliff. But Heathcliff and his adopted sister Cathy become inseparable. When Mr. Earnshaw dies, Hindley becomes master of Wuthering Heights and forces Heathcliff to become a servant, enduring humiliation and physical violence. When Cathy dies, Heathcliff becomes a master of cruelty, obsessed with revenge. When Heathcliff recognizes the growing love between Hareton and Catherine, he embraces death in order to reunite with Cathy. Cathy is Heathcliff's best childhood friend and true love. Selfish and passionate, she goes mad when she goes against her heart and soul and chooses Edgar Linton over Heathcliff. She dies young while giving birth to her only daughter, Catherine, and her memory and ghost haunt Heathcliff for the rest of his life. Catherine, Cathy's daughter with Edgar, is a kind, sweet young woman, unlike her mother. She lives with her father at Thrushcross Grange. At first, she despises Hareton for being an uneducated servant. She falls in love with her sickly, bookish cousin, Linton, who betrays her when threatened by his father, Heathcliff. Linton and Catherine marry, and Catherine cares for him until he dies. While teaching Hareton to read and write, the two fall in love. Mrs. Dean is the main narrator of Wuthering Heights, and she tells the epic history of Heathcliff, as well as the Linton and Earnshaw families, to Mr. Lockwood. Mrs. Dean grows up with Cathy, Hindley, and Heathcliff as a foster sister, whose status evolves solely to the role of a servant. She remains a caring, important confidant to Cathy. She plays the role of mother, protector, judge, and conscience to the major characters in the novel. Edgar is a snobbish boy who grows up to be a kind-spirited gentleman as an adult and later master of Thrushcross Grange. He marries Cathy and remains devoted to her. After Cathy's demise, Edgar tries but ultimately fails to protect his daughter Catherine from Heathcliff's attempts to exact revenge. Hareton's mother dies at birth, and his father Hindley self-destructs. Hareton falls into Heathcliff's clutches and is turned against his father and the trappings of upper-class society. He lives a simple life, blissfully unaware he's a brute. When Catherine teaches him to read and write, they fall in love. And when Heathcliff dies, Wuthering Heights is restored to Hareton. Hindley becomes master of Wuthering Heights, whose jealousy and malice drive him to physical violence and degradation of Heathcliff, which ignites Heathcliff and Cathy's thwarted love and spurs Heathcliff's destructive plans for revenge. Hindley renounces God when his wife dies and becomes a careless alcoholic and abusive father. Ghosts, weather, wind, and trees, the sprawling English moors, dogs, hair. These are the most important symbols recurring throughout the Gothic novel Wuthering Heights. Ghosts symbolize lost souls, memory, and the past in Wuthering Heights. Supporting the themes of love and obsession and good versus evil, Cathy's ghost lingers in Heathcliff's memory, galvanizing memories of the past and of love's haunting obsession. It actively, vengefully pursues Heathcliff in the end, and is also present in Cathy and Heathcliff's desire to be on the moors, haunting them together like lost souls roaming the earth. Another symbol is weather, wind, and trees. Emily Bronte uses weather to produce tone, reflect the plot, and mirror the character's emotions. Typically, storms and rain symbolize angry, violent, or passionate emotions, and breezes and calm weather reflect peace, hope, and goodness. Wind and trees symbolize how the emotions of one character shape or disfigure the growth of another, as much as how the emotional and physical environment plays a role in shaping or contorting a character's disposition. The moors are another key symbol. Moors are barren strips of land unsuitable for planting that cover England. They are used to symbolize the idea of betweenness, between life and death, between good and evil. For Cathy and Heathcliff, the moors are a place of freedom from their unhappy home life and from the difference in their social circumstances that divide them. Ultimately, Heathcliff and Cathy's love of roaming the moors reflects their rejection of both heaven and earth, roaming between them as if in a kind of purgatory. Dogs symbolically represent instincts, often protective or violent ones, juxtaposed with training and obedience. For example, Hareton is turned into a loyal watchdog, first by Heathcliff and then by Catherine. Interactions with dogs also mark vital transitions, either of plot or of a character's perceptions, as when the unfriendly dog at the book's opening shows Mr. Lockwood that he is in unfamiliar territory. Dogs also symbolize individuals treating other individuals as less valuable and less worthy of happiness and fulfillment, and more like possessions to own, control, or abuse. Hair is another important symbol. Blonde hair, or light hair, symbolizes Thrushcross Grange, the Linton family, indulged privilege, good, angels, weakness, gentleness, and education. But black or dark hair symbolizes Wuthering Heights, the Earnshaw family, privilege thwarted or taken down in status, evil, devils, strength, passion, and rejection of education. The symbol shines when Catherine's blonde hair is observed dangling and mingling with Hareton's dark hair at the novel's end, representing love's overcoming evil and a restored peace and unity. Emily Bronte.
Okay, we go so far. That is already the characters and the themes, yeah? Basically, that already covers a lot of you already know the plot. Now you get a little bit more of the characters because as we already discussed before, wait, let me, yeah. As we already discussed before, the story itself, if it comes to literary devices, remember we've got techniques and elements. Now the elements that are the components that make up the story, we would have the plot, the setting, we would have characterization, we would have mood, themes, symbols, all that come together. So just now going over the characters, it's a little bit of characterization, telling about what each character is like and what he or she does. And then the symbols that we see in the story, which bring meaning as well. So an author uses all these components when he or she writes. Isn't that amazing? Like having to think about the elements of the narrative arc, of the rising action, the climax, the conflict, and then the falling action, but also the mood that needs to be created, the theme that has to be created, the symbols that have to be used, characterization that has to be explained. Wow, a whole other things that have to be included within one story. Yeah, so basically what we're doing is trying to recognize that and understanding that. Starting in March, we're going to go a bit more into the techniques and understanding and recognizing the techniques. Today, we're going to review until chapter 16. Next week, we will be doing until chapter 20. And then the part of the first Catherine is done. And then we go to the next part, which is more into the second Catherine. That is Catherine's daughter that will be explained within the story. Okay? Now, what I would like to do is review first, like, what has the story been about? Like, if we're looking at it for so far, maybe we can go over some of the chapters, yeah? So we are at, basically, you already know chapters 1 until 4. That was part 1, a strange household. That was when Mr. Lockwood came as a tenant to Trustcross Grange to lease it, rent it, to live there for a while. And in those first 4 chapters, we get to know him and Mr. Heathcliff and Nellie, who was actually a helper at the house. And then Mr. Lockwood gets sick, right? And so Miss Nellie tells the story of the origin of the Earnshaws that lived at Wuthering Heights and the Linton family that lived at Trustcross Grange. And so from chapter 5, which is the second part, the first Catherine, Nellie begins to tell the story of both families and both estates. And that goes until chapter 20. And then chapter 21, which is part 3, that's about the second Catherine. And then in chapter 32, which is part 4, it's the household that has completely changed. And then chapter 33 is part 5, the fruit of revenge is tasteless. And then the last part with chapter 38, which is the last chapter, we have part 6, goodbye to Wuthering Heights. Now, we are at chapter 11 now. When we read chapter 5, I cam scanned everything so I can share it, screen share it, yeah. So in chapter 5, it was about, it says the unwanted stranger. That is when actually the little Heathcliff arrives at the Earnshaw family, and Mr. Earnshaw loves Heathcliff very much, right? But his children, his daughter Catherine and son Hindley, do not like Heathcliff because he is a gypsy, right? Darker skin, poor kid, lower caste, so not wanted. And then in chapter 6, the old Earnshaw, who really, really, really loves Heathcliff, then dies. He gets sick and dies, and then suddenly there's no one left to protect Heathcliff, right? So Heathcliff becomes mistreated by his stepbrother Hindley, who hates him because Hindley knows that his dad loved Heathcliff more than himself, whereas Heathcliff was not really his own kid, right? So there's a lot of abuse there and a lot of mistreatment, and Heathcliff really wants to take revenge. Like, when my time comes, I will take my revenge. And then in chapter 7, Catherine's homecoming. So in chapter 6, we remember the story where Heathcliff and Catherine go to the Linton family in Trustcross Grange. Long story, anyway, she stays there for a while because she got sick, right? Attacked by the dogs. And so after several weeks, when she comes back, that is in chapter 7, we see that Catherine comes back a lady. Yeah, and then when they have the Earnshaw family with the Linton family have dinner, basically that continues into chapter 8. Heathcliff is not allowed to eat with them because he is of a lower caste, because the Linton family doesn't want Heathcliff near to their children. And then the Linton kids are Isabel and Edgar, yeah? So Heathcliff sakit hati banget ya, because of color and different caste. He feels really, really an outcast and is butthurt and says, oh, what the more, I'm going to take my revenge. Then we go to chapter 9. That's where Hindley, who is already married in the meantime, right? Who left and came back with a wife, remember that? His wife gives birth to a son whose name is Hareton, and then she dies. And then Hindley has to raise the baby all by himself, which he can. So he becomes drunk, you know, alcoholic, he's self-pity. And so he kind of leaves Hareton to be raised by Nellie, who later on, when Catherine marries, follows Catherine to Trust Cross Grange. Yeah. So that is bit 9. And then in 10, we get the story of Catherine's choice, where Catherine tells Nellie that she chooses to marry Edgar over Heathcliff. She actually loves Heathcliff, but she thinks that if she marries him, who is of a far lower caste, that nothing will come of him and her. So she chooses to marry Edgar Linton, who is of a higher caste, to restore family honor and all that kind of thing, and money and the whole kind of thing. And Heathcliff hears that and is butthurt because of it, storms off, goes away. And then Catherine waits for him, looks for him, and then she gets totally wet because of the rain and the storm and whatever, and then she gets sick. Yeah, so that is how far we've gotten basically in the story. So now we are at chapter 11. Who can tell me what chapter 11 is about? Don't have to say too much about it, just a little bit. Like, what is chapter 11 about? Should I call names? That's fine too.
Return.
Joseph, go ahead.
Heathcliff returns.
Yeah, very good. He returns to
Wuthering Heights.
Yeah, to Wuthering Heights. Very good. So he went away. He was just angry because he actually really, really loves Catherine. They both love each other. It's like a forbidden love or something. It's weird. It's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet kind of story, yeah? But yeah, angry and butthurt that she marries Daud-Grade. And then in that chapter, is there anything else that happens that is outstanding and very clear? Catherine marries, yeah? Catherine marries Edgar. And then Catherine moves because Edgar Linton lives at the estate of Trust Cross Grange. So she moves with Edgar to Trust Cross Grange. And so Nellie, who has been her helper, moves along with her to the different estates. And that's why then Nellie, the helper, needs to leave Hareton behind, who's still little, because, well, she has to follow Catherine. So Hareton is left alone with Heathcliff and Joseph, the servant guy. So what is to become of that little boy, right? Okay, cool beans. Now, chapter 12, Miss Isabella. What is happening in chapter 12? Anyone else? Thanks, Joseph. Appreciate it, man. Anyone else who voluntarily wants to tell me what chapter 12 is about? No? Raphael, I'm going to ask you, sir, what's chapter 12 about? What about Miss Isabella?
Miss Isabella was revealed to have feelings towards Mr. Heathcliff.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, she falls in love with him. Can you tell me, do you think that Heathcliff loves her back?
No, I don't think so, because at that time, because it clearly stated that he said she wishes to be out of my society now. In any case, I think that's kind of like an ignorance from him.
Yeah, awesome.
So, yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you for using the evidence. Very good. Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't. Remember, guys, that Heathcliff's whole sole purpose is revenge. So he is willing to marry a woman. He wanted to marry Catherine, right? But she married Edgar. So for him, you know, I die or I just dedicate my whole life to revenge. So dedicate his whole life for revenge. So basically, yeah, he doesn't love Isabel. He kind of uses her. He uses her to get back at the family and to get back at Catherine and to get the estate. He's out to get all the estates. Basically, that's what he wants to do. Yeah. Very good, Raphael. Thank you. Chapter 13 on evil influence. Oh, yeah, what is that? Can I ask Amrika, hi. Could you tell me what chapter 13 is about?
Yes, miss. Sorry.
What about chapter 13? What happens in that chapter?
Wait.
What do you think? It says an influence, an evil influence. Influence from
Sorry.
whom to whom? Do you know? Andika, yes or no?
I have not read it yet.
Okay, that's very honest. I appreciate that. Thank you. Better just say the truth.
Yes.
Totally agree with that. Next time, read it, yeah? Okay. Cool. Yeah. Okay, Joy, I'm gonna ask you. Love how you sit there. It's as if you're sitting in class. So
it's hurt and missed because he got influenced by Heathcliff, so he swore.
Yep.
Like he cursed.
Hareton, right? The little boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Heathcliff is not a good influence, yeah? Joy, do you know why that happens? Why does Heathcliff do that?
Because he was abused by Hindley, right? Before.
Yeah. And who's Hindley again?
Hindley is his stepbrother.
Yeah.
Stepbrother.
Which is Hareton's dad, yeah?
Yeah, Hareton's dad.
Very good. You read it. Thank you. Yeah, so Hindley is Hareton's dad, and it's totally correct what Joy says. Heathcliff just wants to take revenge. Well, Hindley is not raising his kid. Remember, his wife died, he's all sad, he's into alcohol, and he is about losing his money in his business because he's not working anymore. And so there's no money coming in. So he starts, and remember, Heathcliff went away but came back rich, right? So at that point, he starts later on, yeah, Hindley starts borrowing money from Heathcliff to survive. And that is how Heathcliff slowly, bit by bit, takes Wuthering Heights away from Hindley, and then later takes Truscross Grange away also. So that is his initial plan, but it is not yet in this chapter. In this chapter, he's just trying to influence Hareton in a bad way. So he kind of takes his time in his revenge, you know? He doesn't do it overnight. He thinks like, well, heck, I've got a long time to do this. Let's take the time. Slowly but surely, how creepy is that? That's evil to the max, I think. Yeah. Okay, Joy, well done. I keep wanting to say Mita. Why is that? So funny. Okay, chapter 14, the quarrel. What is all that about? What's the quarrel about? I want to ask Aaron.
Yes.
Aaron, Yeah, what is all that about? What's chapter 14 about?
I didn't read until that yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we've got at least some honesty going on here. That's really good. But I do hope next time you guys read, yeah? Because I really, really, really would like to start analyzing this story. Thank you, Erin. Okay, I'm going to ask Angeline.
Yes, Miss.
What about
Okay,
chapter 14?
so it's about Heathcliff, Huck, Isabella until Mr. Edgar and Mrs. Catherine became very angry.
Right.
And then Catherine became very upset.
Yes. And Heathcliff does something. He uses a person. Are you aware of who Heathcliff uses or misuses?
What?
Who does Heathcliff treat bad in this part of the story, or starts treating bad?
Is it Isabella?
Yeah, very good. The weird thing is that she's still in love with the dude, right? Like, she doesn't go like, hi, you're not so good, I should stay away from you. It's like this toxic relationship, you know? Yeah. So in the end, he runs away with her, yeah? He goes away with her. They run away. Yeah. And why do they do that? Do you know why?
Because they want to be married.
Yeah. So this is all everything to do with Catherine being married to Edgar, and then Heathcliff goes away because he has a heartache, but then he comes back as a very rich and strong man, you know? Yeah. So that is what we already talked about in 11. So Heathcliff returns strong and full of money and power, and so he starts to do his revenge, and then yeah, he comes back and meets Catherine, and he still wants to see Catherine even though she's married. So she either goes there or she comes over to Wuthering Heights, and they still see each other. But it's not good. I mean, like Catherine's husband, who's Catherine's husband again?
Edgar.
Yeah, very good. Edgar, of course, doesn't like that, you know, like no way. And then they start really fighting because they have these quarrels because basically they love each other, but can't be with each other. Oh, it's so complicated. So yeah, he uses Isabel. He runs away with her. And then in the end, they go back to Wuthering Heights and stay there. But Isabel actually wants to see Catherine and wants to see her brother. She was very close to her brother, Edgar, and close to Catherine. But Edgar is angry, yeah? Does anyone know why Edgar is angry at Isabella? Why
Can I try?
Yeah?
Because Edgar said that if Isabella marry Heathcliff, he doesn't want to be Isabella's brother anymore.
Very good. Yeah, it's all because they don't like Heathcliff. That's why. But she doesn't listen. And then she sends this super long letter later on where she says sorry. Now, what about chapter 15? Steffi, what about 15?
Chapter 15?
Yeah.
After the whole conflict with Heathcliff and Linton. And then, because of that conflict, Catherine? Cathy got into a fight with Linton, right? And then he also got sick after that.
Yep. Why does she end up fighting with her husband?
Because her husband was mad, and because like Cathy keeps saying that she wants to see Heathcliff, but like her husband doesn't like Heathcliff, so her husband got mad and said like, would you rather choose Heathcliff or me or something?
Yeah, exactly. And then she kind of gets sick, and then she gets really, 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 really sick. She almost dies. Yeah, very good. And then the last one, chapter 16, Rara. What about chapter 16? 2 bad months. What happens there?
Catherine's sick, ill for 2 months, and then it turns out that she's pregnant. And then Isabella wrote letters for Edgar and Nellie.
Yeah, very good. And she states that she is?
Sorry, what?
And what does she state? What is the main thing she wants to say to her brother and Nellie?
That she apologized, and Heathcliff abused her there because Heathcliff cannot punish Edgar because of Edgar. Catherine is ill, right? So she cannot punish Edgar. So
yeah. And in this part, she's already married to Heathcliff, yeah? Oh, wow, very good. For those who really read and could answer, I appreciate it big time. Yeah, in this part, so for next week, basically, we are going to read 17, 18, 19, 20, 17 until 20. So I'd like to read a little bit with you guys. I'm going to share screen starting from 17, yeah? Okay, let me scroll down. Yeah, my chem scans are not the best, but they work. You can just read from your own book, but this is just more to show where we are at. So if you're confused where we are at, you can see. 17. One more. Here. Yeah, a visit to Wuthering Heights. Okay, I'm gonna ask Steffi to start reading.
Me?
Yeah, you can also just take from your book, yeah.
As soon as I had finished Isabella's letter, I went to the master and gave him the news of his sister and her wish for some sign of his forgiveness. I have nothing to say to her, Ellen, was his reply. You may call this afternoon and say I'm sorry I've lost her. We are now divided forever. Mr. Edgar's coldness saddened me very greatly, and all the way to Wuthering Heights I worried my brains as how to soften his answer. There was never such a miserable scene as the house, formerly so cheerful, presented on my arrival. The young lady already shared the appearance of disorder that surrounded her. Her pretty face was pale and expressionless, her hair uncurled, some hanging down and some carelessly twisted round her head. Probably she had not tidied her dress since the evening before.
Thank you. Remember that in the video, that narrator, that man explained that the hair was one of the symbols in the story. Yeah, that Heathcliff's hair is black and untidy, and whereas Catherine's hair was blonde and mostly tidy. And here it says it wasn't curled. Curling the hair would mean that she had taken well care of herself and presenting herself as a lady. So in this case, pale, expressionless, her hair uncurled, some hanging down and some carelessly twisted, shows her state of being at that particular moment, which is not good. Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna ask Dewey to continue reading.
Was not there, but
can you make it louder? I cannot hear you. Yeah.
Hindley was not there, but Mr. Heathcliff sat at a table. He rose and offered me a chair. He was the only thing that seemed respectable, and I thought he had never looked better. A stranger would have thought him a born gentleman and his wife a person of low origin. She came forward, half expecting a letter, and I had to tell her her brother's words. Her lip trembled, and she returned to her seat. Her husband began questioning me about Catherine. Mrs. Linton is not just recovering, I told him. She'll never be like she was, but her life is safe. Her appearance is greatly changed, her character more so, and the person who is forced to be her companion will only keep up his love for her by remembering what she was formerly and by pity and a sense of duty.
Judy,
Heathcliff,
thank you. Yeah, very good. Okay, Rafael, can you continue?
Heathcliff forced himself to appear calm. Do you imagine I shall leave Catherine to your master's dirty and pity? Nellie, I must have a promise from you that you'll arrange for me to see her. Agree or refuse. I will see her. What do you say? I say, Mr. Heathcliff, I replied, that another meeting and quarrel between you and Mr. Linton would kill her altogether. With your help, that may be avoided, he said. The fear that she would suffer from his loss keeps me from doing my word. And there you see the difference between our feelings. If he had been in my place and I in his, I would never have raised a hand against him as long as she desired his company. The moment her feeling had ended, I would have torn his heart out. But until then, I would have died before I touched a single hair of his head. Even so, I interrupted. You don't care about ruining her chances of returning to health by seeing her when she has nearly forgotten you.
Yep. You see, okay. Rafael, can you tell me what does this say about Heathcliff reading this? What emotion speaks strong? Do you know? According to you,
sure.
yeah?
I need to reread.
What do you think?
Not sure. Remorse, maybe?
Remorse could be, yeah. Thank
I'm
you.
not really sure.
Yeah, thank you. William, what do you think? What feeling does this express or emotion? Or it can be a negative one, can be a positive one. Definitely conflicted.
Wait, can I read a bit? Because I didn't, I was like lagging a bit. Can you give me a moment?
Yeah. I definitely think that there's a huge conflict within his heart himself. Yeah, he loves Catherine. So
yeah, it does seem that Heathcliff is like this I wouldn't say toxic, but it's like he's sad but happy at the same time. Like he's sad by letting Catherine go or something like that. But he's also like but this is what she wants and she should get what she wants and something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of like that.
So it's conflicted. Also what Rafael said, remorse, definitely. It's a very conflicted emotions that he's portraying. He seems to be a very difficult person, right? Yeah. Okay, guys, that brings us actually to the end of our lesson because it's almost 12. Please finish chapter 17 until 20, yeah, which is part 1. And then, so next week we can review it together, yeah? And then I'd like to try ask you of more of the elements in the story and the techniques. Yeah. Are there any questions? No? So one of the symbols we clearly saw just now. What are some of the symbols we read?
Hair?
Yeah, the hair, right? Yeah, how her hair was loose and on and not tidy. And remember also another symbol is clearly the winds, the storms, you know, gloominess. There's a lot of symbols going on in this story that kind of set the motion. It sets the mood, yeah? It sets this, you can sense this conflicted, moody, heavy, depressing, difficult situation, you know, like a hate-love circumstance where there is such violent love. That's what you can almost say, violent love, which is expressed through a lot of hate and painful words and actions, basically. Heck, these people don't know how to express love or something. So conflicting. Yeah. Okay, so next week I'd like to go a little bit more into the symbols and into the theme, yeah, of the story and some figurative language, okay? Okay, then, thank you very much. God bless you. Have a great weekend. Enjoy, yeah? Enjoy your weekend. Okay, bye-bye, everybody.